Both Washington and Tehran are publicly backing off the idea of an imminent deal, and Netanyahu is telling his military to crush Hezbollah in Lebanon on the same day. This is Iran War Daily. Today we're separating the diplomatic retreat from the battlefield acceleration, following what Iran's envoys are actually doing in Doha, and putting Rubio's "another way" line in New Delhi next to the sticking points ABC News put on the record.
Two tracks, opposite directions, same Tuesday, and the one with boots and bombs is winning.
We'll get to Netanyahu's language in a minute. I want to stay with the diplomacy first, because the sourcing finally got concrete enough to take seriously. From Jackie DeFusco at WBAL-TV.
The Associated Press reports that potential peace agreement would reopen the Strait of Hormuz and see Iran give up its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. That could potentially be used to make nuclear weapon, although the process for handing it over would be subject to further talks over 60 days.
Trump posted Sunday that he told his representatives not to rush, and that time is on his side. That's a named actor on social media, on the record. Then earlier the same weekend, he said final details would be announced shortly. Same account, same news cycle, opposite urgency.
The AP says the framework includes reopening Hormuz and Iran handing over its highly enriched uranium stockpile. But the handoff itself gets kicked into a separate 60-day negotiation. So the payoff gets deferred the second you read past the headline.
ABC News today separately names Hormuz control as one of the biggest unresolved sticking points in the formal talks. So the AP framing and the sticking points reporting are just looking at the same gap from different sides.
The Democratic critic here is making the Hegseth comparison directly. 11 weeks ago, the Pentagon said Iran's defenses were obliterated and the nuclear material was basically within reach. And now the posture may be leaving that material inside Iran. That's a pretty serious shift in the stated aim of the operation.
Here's Michael Martina at RNZ News.
Iran and the United States have played down hopes for an imminent breakthrough in the 3-month-old war on Monday, with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying there will either be a good agreement or Washington would deal with the country in another way.
Rubio said it in New Delhi, on the record, to reporters. A good deal or Washington deals with Iran another way. That's the sharpest named threat language from a U.S. principal this week. And it lands the same day Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson is publicly saying no agreement is imminent. So both capitals are cooling expectations at once.
And notice what Rubio actually called the solid thing on the table. Open the Strait, then do a time-limited negotiation on nuclear issues later. Iran's spokesperson says the MOU has no specific details on Hormuz management and that Hormuz belongs to the coastal states. Those are not close positions.
This is the update we needed on the enrichment disposal thread from earlier this week. ABC News names Hormuz control and uranium disposition as the two sticking points. Khamenei's directive that uranium stays in Iran is still standing. And today both sides said in public that no signature is coming. The gap isn't closing. It's just getting labeled better.
Iran's top envoys are physically in Qatar today, per the Straits Times. Doha, the same channel where the $12 billion frozen funds demand was still unresolved last episode. So what is Doha hosting right now? A negotiation or Iran parking its delegation somewhere visible while both sides tell the press to lower expectations?
ABC News with Audrey Corti.
The outline of a potential U.S.-Iran agreement is beginning to emerge, but major questions remain, from how the Strait of Hormuz would reopen to the future of Iran's nuclear program. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested a deal is close, saying an agreement was largely negotiated, before adding on Sunday, local time, that negotiations were proceeding in an orderly and constructive manner.
ABC News, byline Audrey Corti, published Monday. And the headline is doing real work here. Hormuz control and uranium disposition are named as two separate structural sticking points, not bundled together. That's different from a week of reporting that treated the nuclear question as the whole story.
Hormuz is about a fifth of the world's oil trade, moving through a choke point Iran has been physically controlling since late February. And we're only now getting a mainstream piece to name Hormuz sovereignty as a formal deal sticking point. Lloyd's has been pricing that reality into hull insurance for months.
Trump said Saturday the Strait will be opened as part of any agreement. That's a named condition on the record. Tasnim news agency, Iran's semi-official outlet, reported the same day that key clauses are still unresolved. Both are public. They do not point to the same timeline.
Iran has controlled who transits that strait for 3 months. You don't give that up on a handshake, especially when the frozen funds question, which Iran raised as a precondition, is still reportedly sitting in Doha unresolved. The envoys are there right now. Doha doesn't get called in for a done deal.
Here's the Straits Times.
Dubai. Iran's top negotiator and its foreign minister were in Doha for talks with Qatar's prime minister on a potential deal with the United States to end the 3-month-old war, an official briefed on the visit said on May 25th. This comes after Iran and the U.S. played down hopes of an imminent breakthrough.
Following up on yesterday's truce in Hormuz framework, Iran's top negotiator and foreign minister are now physically in Doha, meeting Qatar's prime minister. That's the first time we've got a named venue, a named delegation, and a named host for this diplomatic track, per the Straits Times. At the same time, both governments are publicly walking back imminent breakthrough language.
Rubio says another way from New Delhi, the envoys land in Doha, and the last thing still unresolved out of Doha is Iran's demand to release frozen funds as a precondition to signing anything. So what exactly are the envoys there to do? Negotiate or collect?
Rubio's "another way" line is worth treating as its own data point. It's on the record, from a named official, in a named city, said directly to reporters. That's the sharpest public threat language from a sitting U.S. official this week, and it lands the same day both sides are managing expectations down.
And ABC News today names Strait of Hormuz control as one of the specific sticking points, not just background noise, a formal negotiating obstacle. Lloyd's desks are still pricing war risk on hulls transiting that strait, while the two parties haggling over who controls it are sitting in the same Doha building.
The Straits Times writes,
Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on May 25th he had ordered the military to intensify its offensive in Lebanon in an effort to crush Hezbollah, accusing the group of targeting Israeli forces with drone attacks. I have ordered an even greater acceleration of our operations, Mr. Netanyahu said in a video statement posted on his Telegram channel.
Netanyahu said it on his Telegram channel on May 25th, direct quote, "I have ordered an even greater acceleration of our operations. We will crush them." That's a named actor, a named platform, and a specific date. And it lands the same day both Washington and Tehran are publicly walking back imminent deal language.
The MOU framework the U.S. and Iran have been negotiating has zero clause that touches Lebanese operations. And Netanyahu just used the diplomatic pause as operational runway. That's what happens when a proxy track has no instructions to stand down.
Worth separating the two drivers here. Hezbollah is running fiber optic drone attacks on Israeli forces, so there's a live tactical exchange, not just political posturing from Jerusalem. Netanyahu is responding to something real. The question is what the ceiling looks like with no active U.S.-Iran deal in the room.
The ceiling question is exactly right, and the answer is nobody in the MOU conversation has set one. Rubio is in New Delhi talking another way. Iran's envoys are in Doha, and Netanyahu just announced more firepower in Lebanon. Those three things are happening at once, and none of them are talking to each other.
If you rely on Iran War Daily for clear, fast-moving updates, try Ebola Watch, a daily DRC and Uganda Ebola outbreak briefing covering case counts, border tracing, WHO vaccine news, and traveler guidance. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've put links to every story from today's briefing in the show notes. So if one of them stuck with you, you can go a little deeper there. That's Iran War Daily for Tuesday, May 26th. This is a Lantern podcast.